In the court of public opinion, there are seldom more tragic verses. Smart lawyers get rich on the deeds of dumb nurses. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Smart Lawyers Love Dumb Nurses. My name is Dr. Brian Smith, and today we are going to talk about the dangers of poor documentation, letting your guard down, and not being focused on your job. I remember an ordinary day from over 55 years ago, like it was yesterday. I was 10 years old and a patient at the local hospital where we lived. My appendix had ruptured a couple days earlier, and I was recovering from an emergency appendectomy. A nurse had entered the room to give me a pain injection. Now, I don't remember my first kiss. I cannot recollect the first time I ate ice cream or watched a baseball game. I do not even recall what I had for breakfast yesterday. But I remember that nurse from 55 plus years ago. I can recall vividly that she was short and stout. She wore a white uniform. She had on a white nurse's cap. She had black hair, and she wore black horn-rimmed glasses. I remember that pain shot because of how much it hurt when that needle went in. It was literally a pain shot. Now, that ordinary day from over 55 years ago stands out because of the negative memories that came from that experience. My ghostly nurse from a distant past stays with me. I still remember after my pain injection started to take effect, and she came back into the room with another nurse. Now here I was alone and scared in a hospital bed for the very first time, drifting into a twilight sleep. My eyes were closed. I was still conscious. And I remember the nurse saying to her colleague, "Just look at that long hair. He looks like a hippie. We really need to give him a haircut." As a 10-year-old kid, I was thinking that they really would cut my hair right there in that hospital bed. Now, today I wish I had that long, thick black hair, but instead I have a mystical and negative memory that still is vivid after 55 plus years. That people may not always recall names or events. They never forget how someone made them feel. This is especially true when it comes to being sick and being cared for by nurses or doctors and medical staff. We can all relate to the frustration of not getting the correct food we ordered, getting our car repaired to our satisfaction, or having packages delivered properly. You get what you tolerate. Mediocrity is the result of accepting substandard work. But in cases of healthcare, there must be a higher standard. I felt compelled to host this podcast today because I have a concern about the state of nursing, and you should too. Whether you're a nurse, nursing student, doctor, or simply curious about what this podcast is about, you are a potential patient. More specifically, to those of you who have been patients in a healthcare setting, how was your care? I am sure all of us can recall moments when we received great care and when the care was substandard. What went well? What went wrong? And why? The positive experiences with doctors, nurses, and other healthcare staff we remember, but we often seem to recall the negative just as clearly. In fact, we probably remember the negative experiences more deeply and longer. That is where the genesis of the phrase, "Smart lawyers love dumb nurses," originated. I created it to make a visual impact my students would never forget. It was not created to ever put down the profession that I love. It is meant as a warning against carelessness and mediocrity. Mistakes made on the job can be life-changing, not only to the nurse, but especially to the client. And we cannot forget the cost to the family and the healthcare facility. Med errors and inadequate documentation are two of the biggest errors that nurses make on the job. This podcast is aimed primarily at nurses, but my focus throughout this podcast will be on client safety. Client safety should be the bedrock of our awareness when we enter the work area. It should also be the priority topic of educators as well. Med errors alone cost the United States $21 billion a year. Now that's billion with a B. Smart lawyers get rich off the deeds of dumb nurses. The genesis of incorporating a lawyer metaphor to emphasize patient safety can be correlated to nurses defending their work in court. Nurses who are called to court often describe it as one of the most nerve-wracking experiences of their lives. This is one of the reasons why nurses and all healthcare clinicians must follow strict protocols before administering any med. They must also document with impeccable standards. One lie we tell ourselves is that we will remember things. But when nurses and other healthcare workers are called to court, it is usually 6 months or more after that specific clinical experience in question. To put things in perspective, think back for a moment to what you had for dinner precisely 6 months ago. Now imagine yourself in a courtroom with every eye directly on you. Would you be able to recall the exact meal that you had 6 months ago in front of a jury, a judge, spectators, and a team who reviewed your documentation with probing eyes? Envision a scenario of trying to remember your documentation and explaining a critical event several months later. Your work ethic is being questioned by lawyers dissecting every word from your documentation. It's difficult to recall even simple memories, let alone life and death situations on your watch when under direct examination. This is especially true when your career, your reputation, and your license is at stake. Does the phrase, "smart lawyers love dumb nurses," make a little more sense now? You can rationalize it any way you like, but you must never let your guard down in the performance of your duties. Smart lawyers win court cases against careless nurses, nurses who are in a hurry, nurses who cut corners, and nurses who lost focus at a critical juncture. Nurses are taught what to study in nursing school and what to look for in exam questions. Students are taught to look out for distractors on tests. Distractors are incorrect choices that give the appearance of being the correct answer. The same concept must apply when nurses make decisions on the job. Heightened awareness must begin when the nurse walks through those doors to go to work that day. I learned early in my career to keep my guard up when I was working. I referred to it as healthy paranoia. this awareness has served me well. It is valuable to know what is important and what is a distractor. There are distractors in test questions and distractors that take away focus in work situations. It is often a distraction that creates a domino effect toward disaster. Often nurses are responsible for people's hearts. That is a lot of responsibility and can take its toll on you. It can drain you of energy. Energy drain can lead to errors on the job. Healthcare workers often have little time to even take a short break. It's a bad idea, for example, to challenge your urinary system by not taking time to use the restroom for 8 hours. For many nurses, there are few moments to rest the mind and refocus during the workday. The day can be busy with demands of other clients, families, and colleagues. Nursing staff must learn to rest from time to time to reboot and refocus. Nurses and staff must also learn to walk fast, but eat slow. Peace of mind is diminished when nurses feel overwhelmed, especially if the nurse manager does not recognize the issue. When you don't have peace in your heart, the world is always chaotic. The things you hide in your heart can also hurt your heart. But if something costs you your peace of mind, it's too expensive. Part of workplace safety is to stay mentally sharp. Everyone needs a place to refresh their mind, body, and spirit. For me, it is a prayer for strength and safety. I never work a day where I do not offer a prayer of protection for myself and those I am taking care of. Get to know God. He wants to hear your voice. You might end up liking Him more than you planned. My prayers always include the words, "Dear God, let no harm come to my patients, my colleagues, my students, or myself because of my actions or words today." I want to talk about balance today. Balance in the workflow will help nurses avoid critical errors. Balance does not mean giving equal time to everyone and everything. It means giving appropriate time to everyone and everything. One of the main responsibilities of a nurse or any job that you're currently in is being alert. You may say, "Well, I am always alert. I would never make a mistake like that." Do not fool yourself. History is filled with instances where critical errors occurred when someone let their guard down for a moment or became fatigued and negligent in their work. We cannot turn back the hands of time once a deed is done. Over the years, medical malpractice litigation has created painful scenarios causing incalculable emotional turmoil for healthcare professionals. Beyond that, the financial losses often render clinicians devastated. The real tragedy is that these ill-fated healthcare personnel who play a crucial role in malpractice cases could have prevented that error. Whether a seasoned nurse or a certified nursing assistant, the story is the same. A happily employed, intelligent clinician receives a notice of a deposition. Although a bit anxious about having to testify, the belief is everything will be fine. The healthcare worker has been instructed by counsel to keep the answers short, to listen carefully to each question, and to tell the truth. Unfortunately, what happens on deposition day, hitherto known as D-Day for the witness, is an all too familiar experience of being grilled by a prosecuting attorney. The best advice any nurse or clinician should heed is to write your documentation like it will be read in court, because there's a good chance that it will be. As a nursing educator, I remind my students and myself to communicate with other team members like it was being recorded on video. Somewhere, the work of a nurse is going to be reviewed, and it's so important to never let your guard down when on the job. Of course, there is always that one nurse out of a million who would unthinkingly unplug a life support to charge their phone. But in the final analysis, our colleagues can be trusted. However, whether on the job or in your personal life, I encourage you to follow the maxim I embrace. There are only two people I trust. One's me, the other is not you. I think that's a good place to stop for today. My name is Dr. Brian Smith. Stay focused, stay inspired, and stay tuned. Thank you for listening.